There's been recent news that the LCS Players Association has announced that they will be launching the Champions Queue, which is essentially a North American super server. And so, for those that are unfamiliar with the idea, the LPL actually launched a similar type of thing, I want to say in 2018, to where anyone D1 plus and above were eligible to join this server. And if you guys don't know, in China, there are like 13 different fucking servers in China, right? With a whole bunch of different players. And so all of those players can then get funneled into one super server to where everyone is very skilled and they're all D1 plus. And so essentially what North America has tried to do now is they want to do the same thing, but with less people. And so let's go ahead and bring up the tweet here from the LCS Players Association. Just for the record, essentially, they were talking about how Core JJ has spearheaded this. Shout out to the dude. Fucking, he's becoming a goat right now. So essentially what they're doing is they're saying that it's going to be low ping, no one tricks, and ban toxicity and real stakes, right? Whatever that means, but we'll get to that in a second. So this is going to be very legit. And so now you're thinking, okay, well, how can they solve the problem of population density and the fact that, well, there are just not a lot of people that play League of Legends within North America? Well, you probably solve that through the server being only available during a certain set time to where people are only looking for games at a certain time. So we're thinking it's probably going to be like at 6 or 7 p.m., right? So the pros, they're going to wake up at like 9:30 a.m. or 10 a.m. They're going to do their scrims until like 6 p.m. and then they will log on to the Champions Queue server, and that will be the time to where the server goes live. So it'll be at like 6 p.m. Everyone logs in. There's going to be an influx of 50 pros, right? Because 5 players on each team. There's 10 teams. It's 50 pros. And then obviously Academy is going to have to sync their schedule at the same time too. So that's going to be another 50 pros. So that's 100 people that are going to be logging in at the same time. Pretty good influx. And then you're going to have all the high elo people that were invited that weren't one tricks, and that can actually qualify, right? So we're thinking like probably Grandmaster minimum and above. They're all going to be logging on at 6 o'clock, and they're going to have an influx. So that means that queue times should actually be artificially lowered just based upon the restriction of time. So you solve that problem. So obviously, Academy is going to have an auto invite to the server. LCS obviously is going to have an auto invite, and then they're going to be able to invite some people. And I don't know how that vetting process would necessarily work. That is something that probably is to be determined. I don't have any insider knowledge on that shit. They said no one tricks in the post. And I think this entire idea solves the admin problem of what was happening within the regular traditional North American server, which was that essentially the idea was that maybe we could get someone from Riot to police just the top, challenger portion of games. So, hire like 5 people and have them just monitor all the high elo games and look for trolls, look for people that are clearly fucking trolling. So it'd be a human operated system. Look for trolls that are intentionally feeding or talking shit or just being toxic, and just fucking ban them, right? Or people that are stream sniping, etc. Like, just ban the fuck out of them. Well, this solves that problem in the fact that, first of all, you're going to have way less people to where you need to analyze the games. Second of all, it's going to be at a designated time, right? And third, it's going to be at a very high standard, because now you expect near pro level play to be the bar as far as like how you judge people's play, how you judge people's toxicity level, etc. So like this actually solves the admin problem, I think. Now, the whole thing of that post, that Twitter post, when it said there are like actual stakes, I think that might be alluding to the fact that there's probably going to be some kind of reward, whether that be monetary, whether that be you automatically get invited to scouting grounds. Like that would be kind of cool, if you're a good performing amateur, etc. Right? Like all these things would be pretty cool incentives in order to even join the Champions Queue. And kind of tie it into the academy or the amateur circuit. So I think like this has some potential if they do things correctly, like how I'm thinking that they should do it. And I think Riot is smart enough to catch on to that. Now, the problems, let's get to the problems, right? Because everyone's probably wondering that of East Coast players wanting to go pro. You are essentially getting fucked because now none of the pro players are going to be playing in solo queue. So how do you get discovered? Because obviously all the attention is going to be on Champions Queue. And so, you don't get a recommendation from pro players unless you play in that queue because they aren't playing in the normal pleb queue. So then it becomes more difficult because now you're playing with like 80, 90 ping over on this West Coast server. And yes, that does become a problem. And also, too, I want to address the idea that, first, there are like certain champions that you just can't play on high ping. Lee Sin is one notorious one to where you just can't play him on high ping. But so that becomes maybe a more predictable champion pool depending on if the person is a West Coast or East Coast player. Second of all, they intentionally just look bad in this server as a player. And not only that, but there might be like some weird segregation in terms of that, of just like, oh, I don't want the East Coast player on my team, I'm gonna Q dodge or something. And maybe they'll just prevent Q dodging. Maybe they'll just enforce it to where like you have to accept, or if you have so many like unaccepted Q pops, then you get banned from the server for like a week or some shit like that. Like that would be kind of a cool feature, I think. So you could kind of circumvent that aspect, I guess. And it's funny because Riot had this chance to do something similar to this with Faceit, and the fact that Faceit actually wanted to get into the League of Legends space itself and create, private servers, etc. But because Riot has been so anal about having third-party organizers come into their space ever since like, the end of season 2, essentially they haven't let that happen. So this is just basically an idea of what would be Faceit itself. And not only that, but what's interesting is that Faceit also has a monetary buy-in, and the fact that you have to buy into the server. It's like, $10 or $20 a month in order to get access to Faceit itself. So maybe that's actually what the LCS Players Association was talking about in terms of stakes, was that, you have to buy in maybe if you're not a pro, or, something of that aspect. That might actually be something to where it's like, cool, like now you have a membership, you pay $20 a month to play on this server if you're good enough. And, that incentivizes you to not be an asshole on the server, to not be a one trick, etc. And like there is something at stake. So I don't know. I think the entire idea of it is okay, but it also does go against Riot's classic model of, originally, this is why Challenger Q was invented to begin with, was because it's like you have the chance to play with your favorite pros or your streamers or etc. Like you could play with Bjergsen if you're good enough and if you get good. But now that becomes a little bit more removed in the fact that, well, now Bjergsen plays on this other fucking server. Now you have to get onto this server in order to even, have access to that, to where you could play against the very best people. and then maybe become pro one day. So like there is that whole transitional aspect of path to pro that has a break point, I guess. But I don't actually think it's going to be that big of a deal. Like I said, if Riot implements it like the way that I had said of, scouting grounds and whatnot, and being drawn from this challenger queue, etc. And as long as the funnel over from pleb queue is available over into this champions queue, then I don't see any problem with it. But if North America thinks that this is just going to solve their international problems, like, you got another thing coming. Like, it's not just the server itself. It's not just the ping. It's not just the one tricks or the streamers or the stream snipers. It's just a culture aspect, and something that needs to be incredibly improved. And maybe this is one step in the right direction to where it can improve that. But until, I see some shit actually happen, I'm not going to believe it. So, results, we will see, but I am actually up for this experiment. I think it's a decent idea, so I'm excited to see exactly where this goes.